Okay, Chapter 5, where we're talking about segmenting, targeting, and positioning. So this is a little image that I took from another textbook, actually, but I really liked it. I thought it explained things pretty well here. So we start with selecting which customers to serve. So we segment the market into different groups. We divide it into different groups. So that's the dividing part. And then when we select which of those groups we're going to go after, that's the targeting part. So segmenting is just dividing it up into groups, and then targeting is picking which of those groups we're going to go after. Then you need to differentiate your product from your competitors, and positioning is finding a position in the minds of the consumer. What's the first thing they think of when they hear your name? Is it quality? Is it cheap? Is it convenient? What do they think of there? So this is actually in the next chapter, but we'll talk about segmenting, targeting, and positioning in this chapter. So mass marketing is just, I just have one message that I send to everybody here. The same product, the same people, the same message. I don't make any differentiations. But targeted marketing is also called differentiated marketing. And so you pick some different groups. Sometimes I have a slightly different product that I offer to slightly different groups. But that's really more what we see in now. There's not too many things that just appeal universally to everybody. Mass marketing might be like, I don't know, table salt, because the people, people are going to use it the same way, and that's why you really don't see a lot of brands there. But there's not too many things that are just mass marketed. In general, we want to segment and target the market. So it helps us. Oops, what's it doing down there? It helps us kind of avoid some competition. If everybody was just going after everybody, we'd be competing with everybody. So this way, competition. So it helps us avoid some of that. It helps us develop new offerings as we identify new segments of the market and new groups that have needs that need to be met. We can use this to kind of remarket older products, kind of give them a new life, a new twist. We can identify those early adopters. And those are an important group. We can also focus more on profitable customers. Not all customers are profitable, and we want to focus on those guys. So the targeted marketing can help us do that. It also really helps us understand our consumers better. So let's talk about segmenting first. And again, this is just the process of breaking down all the groups into smaller groups that have similar characteristics. So there's four main ways to segment the market. There's actually a whole lot of ways, but we'll focus on these. Behavioral could be the benefits that they seek from the product or how they use the product. We'll go into each of these a little bit more detail. Demographics are things like age, race, income, all kinds of things like that. Geographic is where they are or how they can be reached, and psychographic is what they think about and what they value. What do they? How do they live? Maybe that's a good way. How. So a couple different things there. We're really kind of combining some of the behavioral and some of the demographic things and putting together this. It's a little bit harder to identify than just where they live. So segmenting by behavior. Benefits, usage, and application are the main ways. So what do they want from the product? For example, if you're talking about a car, maybe I just want something with good gas mileage to get me from here to there, whereas somebody else might want something that's going to help their image and make them look cool, and so they value different things. They're going to spend money on different things, whereas somebody else is like, I don't want all that. I just need it to get me from point A to point B. So what they want from the product. Usage is, it could be frequency. For instance, cereal, breakfast cereal, kind of see this. Families with kids tend to eat a lot of cereal. Another good example, this is kind of timely. Peeps, Peeps used to be just, Marshmallow Peeps used to be just Easter. And so the usage, the frequency and the timing of it, it was just Easter. And so then they, now they come out with Peeps for every holiday. Or orange juice, it's just mostly in the morning, and they had a whole campaign, it's not just for breakfast anymore. So sometimes we segment these things by how and when people use them. Application is the ways they use the product. Baking soda, I think I've used that one before, but maybe I use it for baking or maybe I use it for cleaning, and so different customers are using that product in different ways, and so I'll segment them that way. So knowing what customers want, how often they purchase it, and how they're going to use it helps us really break out I'm not saying we're going to pick only people that use it this way. I mean, we might, but really we might market differently to people using it in different ways. Demographics, some of the more common demographic things are age, income, gender, family life cycle. So sometimes it's not age, but people with toddlers have very different spending patterns than people with teenagers. Ethnicity tends to be a good way, because again, what we're looking for is differences in buying habits, things that we can identify. Like I said, if it's table salt and the young people and old people don't purchase any differently, then there's no sense segmenting the market in that way. Buying patterns or habits. That's kind of brings up another point. Just because you can separate it in all these ways doesn't mean you can. There has to be some difference in the behavior. Behavior for it to be important for me to identify it. But if men and women don't purchase this product any differently, don't use this product any differently, then there's no point segmenting the market that way. Geographically, by where they're located, obviously, that could be international, U.S., it could be people in the north versus people in the south. City size and density are also good ways to market it, that they tend to behave differently. Proximity marketing is what you see there with the ad will pop up on your phone that you're driving past the Sheetz right now, do you want to stop in? So that's kind of related to the geographic marketing. And then psychographics is really interesting. Again, we're kind of pulling in some psychology here, but why do they behave the way they do? What's a priority to them? How do they rank behavior? And so this is where you get into like lifestyle things, like if you see things marketed to extreme, whatever, that's that, or everything healthy and organic, that would kind of be in that lifestyle thing too. There's a survey called the Values, Attitudes, and Lifestyle Survey that was developed in the 80s, which is a well-known one. They kind of put people in these groups. I'm not going to go over all these, but these are the different groups in there, and I have a link on here. I'll post this up. You can do the survey yourself and see kind of what group you you're in. That's kind of interesting thing, but you can see different marketing messages targeted towards these different groups, and I think once you become aware of them, you can kind of see those out and about. So those can be interesting if you have the time. The survey's kind of fun. Business to business marketings, there are fewer segments in there because there are fewer customers, right? We talked about that earlier. There's fewer customers just buying more stuff, and they aren't as fickle and a lot of times not as emotional, so there's not as many groups. And some researchers that were quoted in your book divided it this way. You might see other ways to divide this up, but ones that are focused on price, ones that are focused on quality or specific brands, ones that are focused on service, or ones that want to build a relationship. So those would be kind of the common segments in the, and you, like I said, you might see some variations, but it should be pretty close to that. So those are different segments in the business-to-business market. Okay, so now we've broken it, the whole population, into all these different groups, and now we have to decide which of those groups we're going to go after, because there's not too many products that can appeal to all those groups, and so we have to decide which of those segments we're going to go into. The trend in this is getting more and more precise, all the way down to one-to-one marketing, where I just go after my very best customers and try to develop relationships with them. The internet and social media is being used for a lot of that, and I mean, you can see that somebody brought that up in one of the discussions earlier, but you know, I'm over here Googling something, and the next time I'm on Facebook, there's ads popping up for that thing I just looked at. Sometimes that creeps me out, right there, especially if I was on a completely different computer when I Googled that, and now I'm over on a different device, and it still knows that. But that, you know, some people like it because the ads popping up are relevant. Some people don't. It's not always technology. There's a lot of different ways to get this information, but we do see a lot of technology with it, but not always. Some other kind of trends with targeting. Finding new customers is more difficult and more expensive. It's also more expensive than keeping our new customers. So retaining current customers is very important, which is why we keep stressing the importance of developing relationships. Studying their buying patterns gives us a lot of information. There's all kinds of surveys and market research. Loyalty programs tell a lot. I mean, you know, and again, social media, but think about when you go to the grocery store and how it pops out the coupons. It knows that you have a kid and you have a dog, and that you like healthy food. You know, it because they track your programs. You know, they track, and that goes back to those customer research databases that we talked about. So it's important to know that, but it's also important to realize that not all customers are profitable, and some of them, those barnacles, we can end up actually losing money on them, because think about the customer who comes to the restaurant and they're a regular customer, but they just keep sending the food back and back, and so you're actually not making any money on those. Some people actually try to de-market those, or you can't tell them not to come into your restaurant, but if you work in retail, or if you work in a restaurant, you've probably encountered people like that. So when we are looking at these, when we're evaluating all those segments that we got, and we're determining which ones to target, we want to look at, can that market be profitable? Is it a growing market, or is it on the decline? We talked about product life cycle. Is there room for new competitor? If there's already a lot of competition in there, maybe it's not worth going into that one. Is it accessible? Can I reach these people? And are there resources to serve this market? For example, let's say you found out that Spiral Notebook for left-handers. How do you reach left-handers? You know, with your message to tell them that you have this. Are there magazines that just left-handers read? And no, there's not. And so sometimes there's a market there, but you can't really get your message to them because all the other things they do aren't different than anybody else. Sometimes there is a specific market and you can get to these people, but it's not profitable, like a car that was made for people over 7.5 feet tall. I'm sure they would really appreciate that, but there's not that many of them that it'd be worth it for to make a whole car for that. So sometimes that's once you might say, okay, this isn't going to be a good one. And also, is it a good fit with our present business? Since this goes back to that mission statement, does this fit in with our mission overall? Because we don't want to get too diluted there, or we'll lose track of what we're doing and not do it well. So this is a little, and it doesn't have to be global. This could really be any market. You can go mass marketing, or you could go targeted or differentiated marketing. Once you go into the targeted, you can go after different segments, and I might have this line for women and this line for men. You can go concentrated, which is micro-targeting, which is very small. Niche marketing, not trying to be a big market. I'm not trying to be big. I want a small, profitable market, very specialized. And then you could go all the way down to the one-to-one market. So multi-segment, again, it can, let's say I'm hotels, and I have the high end, I have the low end, I have the medium end. So that would be kind of the example of the multi-segment marketing. And it's really nice because let's say your high-end one is doing well and then we hit a recession. Well, your high-end line might not be doing as well now, but your low end is probably doing better. So it helps you smooth that out through economic cycles. And then concentrated, again, it can be risky because you can have all your eggs in one basket if you get too specific here. So there's different versions of that. So it can be risky. It can be profitable too. All right. So then I've decided which segments I'm going to target. That takes me to positioning, which is where I'm in the minds of the consumers. And the exercise I do in class with this one is ice cream. And we sit there and we think of as many brands of ice cream as we can think of. And then I say, okay, for each one of these brands, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when I say this brand? And that's the position. That's like when I say Breyers, most people think all natural. So that's their positioning. That is what sets them apart. And the faster something comes to mind as soon as you say that name, the more effectively they have positioned themselves. So how they conceive it related to the consumers. I always think this is like Craftsman tools are generally good quality kind of a thing. But you want to have a distinct image that stands out from the competition, and that's really important. Again, it just has to be a perceived difference. It's all about perception here, really. It could be that Breyers isn't any more natural than anybody else, but if people perceive it as, that's what's important here. So, as an example, a perceptual map is a graph that shows kind of where you stand on criteria that are important to the consumers. So this one is cars or SUVs or something. And so everywhere from classy to affordable, sporty to kind of conservative. And so then you kind of see where you are on this line. You could have price and quality on here. You could have a lot of different elements that you put on here, but it kind of helps to see where you. It also helps you say, hey, look, there's nobody over here in this market, or there's nobody over here in this market. Maybe that's a good opportunity for me to go in, as long as those are going to be profitable markets. So once you create this position in the minds of the consumers, it's really important to reinforce that. That's when you generally see a tagline. A tagline is not the same thing as a mission statement. The mission statement is kind of for the company to guide them. The tagline is really an advertising thing. So expect more, pay less. That's a tagline, and most stores have that. And again, it really needs to reinforce that position. That's what that's for. And I think I have a link on there where you can do different taglines. But most big companies have a tag. Well, like HCC, stay close, go far. That's the tagline. It's got to be related to the mission, but really it's more of an advertising thing, and it needs to sum up your position in a nice, quick way there. And then you can reposition things too, an effort to move your product to a different place. That can be, if you've been pretty established, that can be really tough. I remember it was several years ago, Hyundai was trying to kind of reposition themselves from just the low-cost guy to a more high-quality guy, and it depending on the product, it can take years to really reposition yourself like that. So, but it can happen, and we can kind of try to move people to you're like, well, if you go back here, you're like, this is where they see me, and this isn't where I want them to see me. I want them to see me up here like this. And so you, and like I said, it can take a long time to change that. So there you go. That is Chapter 5.